Trustee Williams.
Madam President, members of the board, I would like to make a motion to adopt the agenda with the following changes. Delete item 2.12, appointment of the Nevada Interscholastic Activities Association Board of People. I'd like to second the motion.
Thank you, Trustee Brooks. All right, trustees, we have a motion by Trustee Williams and a second by Trustee Brooks. Please cast your votes. Trustee Guzman.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0. Before I open the consent agenda, is there anyone who has not had a chance to complete the public speaker card? If not, please do so now. We will not be accepting cards while we start this item. With that, is Mr. Bayless here? He's first on the consent agenda. I do not see Mr. Bayless. Trustee Guzman, Trustee Garcia Morales, have you received any yellow cards? We have no additional public comment on these items. Trustees, I'm looking for a motion. Trustee Garcia Morales.
Madam President, I'd like to make a motion to adopt the consent agenda.
Thank you, Trustee Garcia Morales. Trustee Williams. I would like a second. Thank you, Trustee Williams. Right, all right, trustees, we have a motion by Trustee Garcia Morales and a second by Trustee Williams. Please cast your votes when you get a chance. Trustee Guzman.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0. And we are moving along. Trustee Brooks.
Thank you. Ratified, I'm going to read the warrants. Ratified warrants as listed in the bills payable transmittal and board memorandum number 08-22-23 in the total amount of $172,065,342 and 80%.
Great. Thank you, Trustee Brooks. All right. So we should let the public know that our regular board meeting will recess until 5:30, at which time we'll begin the joint meeting of the Audit Advisory Committee. So at this moment, we will adjourn until 5:30. So it'll take some time to do what you do. Everybody first. Because and just for additional information, we are recessing because the way you noticed, meetings will begin until 5:30, and we had to give a little bit of wiggle room for our agenda items. So that is when we have to be until 5:30. Thank you all, and we'll see you all in a little bit. Trustee Guzman, are you okay? Hang on, Bill. Be on the line.
Yeah, absolutely.
Perfect. Thank you, Trustee Guzman. We'll see you all soon.
They were all the other items that were done, which I asked to send the meeting. Oh, really? Yeah. I'm gonna go all over this.
Oh, yeah. That's okay. I know. I do not think it's a bad business.
Well, it's literally going to have like the negative.
What?
I've got a bad hip, and so I've needed surgery for a couple years. She said, so I've been in tennis for after And it's very hard worse, so I scheduled it about 2 weeks before this, like it's perfect time, the person. And then I went for a couple hours, I got done, got in the car, I drove with my daughter, would get out. Late. I couldn't like hold and shot like all the way down, I couldn't do anything. Home, I'm taking every drug I get my eating on, legal drugs. I didn't have any illegal ones, I might have tried. And I literally, and so I went into the cabin on Monday, I called the doctor first thing, I said, look, I need a shot, you're just like steroids. So I went in, did that. They said that'll probably take a week or two to take, so it's now it's also weeks, it's now like. It's funny, Steve said to me, my wife seems to get up, sure, and then we get past the lines. It's not what they do anymore, and you gotta get a doctor done. I'm going back to the doctor, so I've been experimenting with different ads and everything. So today's the first day I didn't do anything, and it feels okay, but I have a problem. So all I got is, and then I've been rested. No, right after, right. 19. So after the problem is you go do a bunch of tests, like, you gotta get major, get these ACO, and my heart's okay. I gotta go have my chest X-ray. Should and must, that's an opinion, that's what the definitions. If they wanted it to be required, they should have said it is required to do this, or shall. It's a combination, so the regular one's pretty much done already. Yeah, the regular one's done, now it's just showing. It just reflects. That's done. There was no public comment, there were no items on the regular agenda other than consent and passed without any comments. So you're done. You're done. Yes. They were all probably all in the back.
Yes. I never have to worry about that part. They don't want me testifying here. The front of it.
I keep hearing that around here. When Jazzy 34 came up, that drove a certain part. Yeah. Gabby was so to drive.
It's okay.
Yes, I thank you, your neighbor. I was so new that I was like, very good to see you. So the Gatsby and what years? Right? They have Gatsby and that's probably done.
I don't know why you made me want this shit. I understand why I love this. Because your council, you gotta help me. Don't have to listen.
And maybe it's the audience damage, the shower. But it might be in the audience versus the Gatsby's and Gatsby, so AIC might be defined as. But and this is Jason Gowdy, he's the CFO, this is Richard.
Had a little bit of a system issue.
Did the review of
You know, it's one random thing to start. You found out I knew it was and we were the case of sorry.
Now, so for David Gomez, he went out, right? He's like, here's the new register, turning and some businesses, decent taxes on my Adam. No, you could do it after I go to Smacker. I don't do that. There's two routes. I took the financial accounting audit route, and there's the tax route. I said, they are very divergent.
That's every holiday. Like, you see that.
Oh, yeah, so I was like, I have to get it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Now I'm certainly better than the average. I give, like, my guy, it's like, wow. Because I give a spreadsheet with all the different tabs, supporting documents, everything's cross-referenced. Right, so he's just basically, he tells us that, like, look, when Jason gives you something, he goes to the worksheet. It's just plug in, he's got everything.
Funny thing is.
Thank you.
Awesome.
I wasn't sure.
Yes, we'll be done by midnight.
Yes.
I haven't seen it yet. Yes, no, as I said.
Down to literally like one or two small things and then Jason's improving the case, but per year, I'm like, guys.
It's the reason we send. So we have these questions, then you have the answers here for you.
And like. Yeah, it was rough all around. Half of the audience was really good.
Wow.
I 1050 bicycle. It's hard to take windows on first.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's.
That was sad.
Yeah, I
was thinking
That was. It would have been nice.
We've been trying to schedule.
Yeah, so. Hopefully.
Then. But like a lot of time.
We'll see who shows.
It's so, that was so devastating.
No, you.
My last name is, yes.
Oh, really?
I have. Oh, so stuff that would like.
You always gotta say it's.
But then I figured out that my thing just has to be. Same thing.
Careful, yeah.
So there's a couple of options for there.
Like that. Like scary. It's like scary.
Well, that's what I do. That's how we. So I have like some.
My sister in Portland.
Well, they told if you remove a daughter in front of you, it's a fun. If you remove this clause, it says you can give them which one was having the others on that again.
Oh,
That's
that's.
7-0. That's the principal law. Like, oh, we're gonna be fun.
It was a little bit bad. It felt like my person. Because he had been talking.
Yeah.
I mean, very afraid.
Yeah, there's.
Well, it's more on the private and just staff. Instead of 2 employment. Because I know, he's like, yeah. So, yeah, that's the government forces us to do first.
It's like, it was a woman from the city.
On the one hand, I can
They
get
just started the whole thing. I never.
I
Because they needed to be some treasurer or something like that. I was like, yeah. Also, like, they have the seat like that. I was like, really bad.
Yeah. You didn't even see one.
They know they must. Yeah, they're.
There we go. Reality is, once you come to that. I know it is. Smart.
Shall we work? Fury.
I'm glad that
I know, I did a little first.
It's to do a great job of children. Say that.
When you talk to the school, I'm sorry, this is. DA's office. I'm so hard.
Yeah, that's, you know. What did I like to say? That's the question. Same thing too. That's what it is. And it's like, that's the first one. She said.
Yeah, it's a good look on it. But the cop, he was a rookie. There was 4 other gentlemen at the house that ended up being addressed, but the fact is the rookie should not be the one in trouble. I want 2 weeks off the force to come out. That's like unfair, Jim. I mean. Yeah, I just figured. So we was asking. Okay. Pass it on. Yes. Some. Yeah. You guys just paychecks.
Yeah, right. You have to- I mean, I will go down like.
That's how you see the streets. That's why
And so I chat.
We're gonna come back from recess. We would love to welcome the Audit Advisory Committee members to this meeting. Thank you all for being here on what is that? Today is Thursday, Thursday in November, very close to the holidays. We move on to agenda item 3.0. Joint meeting with the Audit Advisory Committee. You're starting at 5:30. Trustee.
Madam President, members of the board, I'd like to make a motion to adopt the agenda as presented.
Thank you, Trustee Brooks. Trustee Williams. I will second. Thank you, Trustee Williams. Trustee, we have a motion by Trustee Brooks and a second by Trustee Williams. Please cast your votes. Trustee Guzman.
Aye.
All right, motion passes 7-0. We're moving on to agenda item 3.02. Presentation of the annual independent auditor's report of for the fiscal year ending in June 30th, 2022. Now I'm tossing this over to Mr. Gowdy. You're taking us on the.
Thank you, Madam President. Jason Getting to the record. First, I wanted to actually let the audit committee introduce themselves, and then what I'll do is I'll give a very brief discussion on the process, and then I'll turn it over to Ms. Miramontes, who is our partner from the audit firm, and let her walk through the 3.02. After that, I will then provide an update and open up for questions for myself, anybody out here, as well as the audit advisory committee. So with that, I'll turn it over to the audit advisory committee. Mr. Gowdy.
My name is Eric Bashad. I've been on the audit advisory committee for, I believe this is my 5th year now. So I've been around. With Ms. Miramontes hearing her presentation or her auditors who have been speaking here. But I've been an accountant since 1996, so I have a lot of experience. I teach UNLV accounting as well. And I work for a family office here in town. I've worked with some big accounting firms in the past, so I have a different accounting experience. So,
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Anna Marie Binder. This is my 2nd year on the Audit Advisory Committee, and I just am on, as you all know, and I am very honored to continue to serve in this capacity. So I look forward to our presentation tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gowdy.
Thank you, Jason Getting for the record. Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Jara. Tonight, we're going to present our annual comprehensive financial report and the related internal audit annual report for the year June 30th, 2022. I would like to acknowledge that some members of the accounting team are in the audience, and certainly this is a lot of their hard work, significantly more hard work than I put into it. This is what they do all year long. I merely assist them, and they've done a great job. And I will point out a couple of things a little later as we go through the presentation about some of the work they did. But with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Miramontes to walk through the actual audit report itself. And then after that, I will give a high-level review of the financial statements myself. Thank you.
I am Candy Germontes. I am the audit partner serving for corporate research audits and have been in that capacity for quite a number of years. So tonight, I'm going to walk through the report. We issue several reports, so the audit is not just over the time. An opinion on the financial statements. Standards over compliance and laws and regulations and internal controls. And then we also issue a report in accordance with uniform guidance, which covers all of your federal money. So we are issuing an opinion on the major programs that we tested. We also issue a report on internal. So to start with, I don't know if I refer to any of the pages that I am looking at, but I am in 3.02A. So my first report is titled the Independent Auditor's Report. This is the report that covers the or the auditing standards, and we are looking. So this report covers your internal controls over financial reporting. We do not issue an opinion, but we do look for material weaknesses and significant deficiencies in your internal controls over financial reporting. And we would identify those in a separate schedule. We did not identify any material weaknesses, significant deficiencies that needed to be reported. We also look at, we issue a report on compliance with the laws and regulations. And we did not identify any non-compliance with your financial reporting that needed to be reported about. And then the next report begins on page 8 of 19 of 302A. And this is our report over, it's in accordance with you guys, over the major programs. So we identify programs that act as major, typically programs that are in excess of $3 million are required to be audited. We do a risk assessment on those to determine which ones are major. And then we test those for the compliance requirements that are directed material in accordance under uniform guidance. And then we also look at the internal controls over those major programs. And again, we did not identify we issued an unmodified opinion over all of the compliance requirements for all of those major programs. And we did not identify any significant deficiency or material weaknesses in the internal controls over the compliance for those federal programs. Reports, and then there's this schedule of expenditures, which is and then the last report that we issue is just our auditor's comments, and it is so that we can be in compliance with Nevada revised statutes. So Nevada revised statutes requires us to issue comments in current statute compliance, prior year statute compliance, recommendations, and then some comments required by NR 254-6113 and NRS 254-6115 are regarding capital projects funds and your natural disaster stabilization fund. And so those comments are all on page 19 and 19 of 302A. Pretty much we did not identify that case.
And then also some of our major initiatives. And so that's just a simple way to look at it. The other piece that I wanted to call up on page 24 and 25 from a board perspective, and this is what I mentioned earlier about our financial team, is that there are 2 certificates of excellence in financial reporting from the Government Finance Officers Association and the Association of Business Officials International. And so those are awards we get for obviously outstanding financial reporting performance. The GFOA award, I believe we've got around 36 to 38 years in a row. And so we continue to strive to make sure we have excellence in financial reporting, and this helps support that. The next piece is that another good place for the public to get a good understanding of the district is in management's discussion and analysis. And those start on page 32 for board reference. And again, what this is this is more of a narrative talking about the results of financial statements throughout the year, the good, the bad, and the things that were done, and trying to give, it's really supposed to be written in layman's terms, and it is pretty simplistic, to help people understand during the year. The next area that I'll talk about is the basic financial statements start on page 45. I'm not going to go through all of those individually, but that's really where they start. And then one of the more important documents that we always talk about is the comparative balance sheet for the general fund, and that is on page 136 of board reference. And so what that shows is essentially the asset, the liabilities, and obviously one of the more important components that we've talked about, at least since I've been here, is the fund balance, and primarily around unassigned fund balance. The reason that's so important is because that's essentially our reserves that is available for when we have shortfalls in revenues, we have additional expenditures, things of that nature. In the past, we've had very limited. When I first got here in 17, it was at about $6.6 million. We now have an unassigned ending fund balance of almost $113 million, which just is about 4% of our expenditures. And so that is a step in the right direction. Additionally, in compliance with NRS 388G, we have restricted funds that are carryover funds that are in schools. That totals right around $207 million that's available. Additionally, of note is that during the 2022 school year or fiscal year, we had additional reserves assigned for future initiatives of $89 million that we have been able to use throughout this year for some of the projects and some of the changes to pay structure that we've enacted to address some of our challenges. And so that's why that's there as well. So that's the overview of the balance sheet. The next piece I want to talk about is on page 137. This starts our schedule of revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balance. And I'm just going to highlight a couple of areas. One is our revenues were right around $30 million less than our budget. There were two main components of that. The first is that the enrollment down, and so our people-centered funding base was down around 7.5%. Component was in our investment income. The market did poorly. The good news is this is what I'm going to call non-real losses. We typically hold virtually all of our investments to maturity. Ultimately get the full value out of it once it matures. The mark-to-market is under GASB. Any point during time we have to market what those things are worth at this time we sold them. And so if we sold all those at this point, we would have lost. We will not. We will hold those to maturity and the 2-ish% that we typically get. So while we have to report that it does impact us, it's not something that is a significant risk to the district. The next piece I want to call out is on the bottom of that page is that there's a significant difference in budget to actual for spend or expenditures, and it's around $191 million less than budget in expenditures, and this is our regular programs. This is primarily due to the vacancies in schools as well as the supply carryover. As you know, under NRS, we can only spend what we budget. So we assume from a budgetary perspective that 100% of the carryover from the prior year gets spent. And so that's why that number is so large. Going to page 143 is the component total expenditures of $2 million lower in totality. So there were other components that drive the additional amount over the 190 are be it central admin outside of the schools also have shortages in positions and shortages in spend in certain areas. So you pick up some additional funding there. And then also to purchase some buses. And when those don't get purchased in the year because they arrive later, we've had supply chain issues, those remain there. And so what happens is they reserve and spend that money next year. So it's not a real savings. It's just time to get service. So the financial statement components there. The next area I want to go to is it is on page 228. And this is a listing of the principal taxpayers. We know that property taxes are a significant component of our budget, even under the state education funding now. It goes into one bucket, but it's still a large piece of that bucket. And so I like to point out the large taxpayers in the state, starting with MGM, going all the way down to the Howard Hughes Corporation, and the total assessed value and their percentage of the Clark County's total county taxable value. The next page that I want to refer to is on page 234, which this is our legal debt margin. I just wanted to point out that we are in compliance with our legal debt margin. We're significantly below that margin, and to make sure that we are in compliance with the law itself. The next page.
Okay. For the folks are out, we really need to hear the information that's being sent to us, so we ask that you silence.
Thank you. The next is on page 237. And this is the demographic and economic statistics for Clark County over the last 10 years. And what this shows is that population itself has pretty much leveled out, which we're all aware of over the last few years. Personal income has gone up dramatically over the last couple of years, even especially coming out of COVID. In 2021, 2022 is expected to be higher. Those results are not available yet. Per capita personal income has continued to increase significantly. Number of schools shows our enrollment has, again, as we're aware, flattened out. And then unemployment rate, which is a good thing for all of us, it's come down to right around 5.33% in 2022. The next page I will refer to is the next page, which is these are just the principal employers. I like to point this out because we are still the largest employer in Clark County at just over 40,000 employees. The next area is 239, which this is district employees. This shows our employees, as I mentioned, just 40,000. And obviously, we like to show that the top piece that the vast majority of our employees are in the instructional unit, which is north of 26,500 employees. The next page is 242. And this is just it's a statistical cost per student page. It's just one of the components that we compile. It takes total expenditures and then it takes total enrollment, breaks it down in total cost per pupil, just to show that, you know, we actually continue to increase the amount of spend on students each year. Percentage change, teaching staff, that's the total number of budgeted teaching staff. And then the student to teacher ratio. I want to emphasize this is not class sizes. This is just simply a mathematical calculation of taking the total enrollment and dividing that by the total budgeted teaching staff that are listed there in that schedule. And again, it shows that we have made slight improvements in that we were as high as 20 back in 2013, so it has come down. We all know there's more work to be done there, but at least it shows a trend in the right direction. Additionally, it shows the number of free and reduced meals that has dramatically increased with the essentially 100% ability that we have to feed our students, which is great. And with that, I will end my presentation and open to the Audit Advisory Committee, the board. Anyone else? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Gowdy, and to our amazing staff who again help us do the work, and with this work. So thank you all. We do have a couple trustees in the queue, so we'll start with questions and just a kind reminder that this is not an action item. Start with trustee Garcia.
Thank you, Madam President. I have a couple of questions. I have a statement I want to share. Mr. Gowdy, earlier you shared that several years ago we had an ending fund balance of $6.6 million. And today we have over $113 million. What does this say about in this audit specifically, what does it say about the school district's position today versus 4 years ago?
Thank you, Chief Secretary, for the record. Madam President, Trustee Garcia Morales. Chief Secretary, for the record. So it says that we've been prudent and responsible with taxpayer dollars. It shows that we made the decisions that we needed to make over time and set policies and practices, and had the support of the board as well as Dr. Jara and my team of going through and analyzing what can be done from a financial perspective and actually enacting that. The financial statements, as Ms. Mirantes pointed out, are unmodified opinion, which means that they can be relied upon by the financial community that utilizes these when we issue bonds. You know, if we were ever in a position to go out and get sector loans, which we do not do, but that's what businesses do. So they have these financial statements, and it shows that we have improved financial position and stability significantly over the past 4 or 5 years. The bond ratings when I first came in didn't technically drop, and then we were also put on fiscal watch. It took us just about 3 years to get off fiscal watch. We got off that. We also had the bond ratings move back to a neutral outlook, which is back where we were before we had some significant challenges. And so what I think this really shows is that we are significantly more financially stable than we were 4 or 5 years ago. I've made the statement before, a 4% ending fund balance is not adequate for a district this size. Standards in government accounting are somewhere around 16%. Those are mainly for cities and other jurisdictions that really have their own taxes and drive their own revenues. We've got a pretty, under the new people-centered funding plan, it's a much more protected source of revenues. And so I don't think that a 16% is reasonable. 4% is still a little low. We should be up somewhere between 6-ish, maybe a little higher. And so that we can continue to do what we've done and provide the services and additional funding for projects as we need it without having to go back to schools and make cuts.
Thank you. This question is for the auditors. This is a very comprehensive report, over 200 pages, over 200 pages, and you combine everything. To me, it seems like a very if you put everything on this report. I'm just curious what the level of is there another report that exists that would help us to be more transparent regarding the school district's resources?
Well, this is as far as your financial reporting. I would say this is extremely comprehensive, and as Mr. Gowdy pointed out, that management discussion and analysis and the transmittal letter are really kind of more layman's. If you don't understand the numbers, they actually provide a good story for you to understand the financial statements.
Thank you. My last piece is simply just my company also as a huge company. I've been using company, but my company also uses IBM as auditors as well.
Thank you, Trustee Garcia. Any questions from our audit committee? Any folks? Again, it's we'll go ahead and go back and forth here, and then we do have some other trustees up here that have questions. Spiders, do you want to go?
Thank you, Madam President. I just in reviewing this, and when you look and see that we're expending just shy of 12,000 a year per pupil, I wanted to thank Mr. Gowdy for the work that he's done on the Commission for School Funding. Their report was released yesterday. I know it's 405 pages, so if you're bored over the holidays, you have some great reading material. But I guess out loud for the public who's not going to read that report, I believe the recommendation going into the legislature is to bump our per pupil spending to upwards of 14,000 per student. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but I did want to thank him for that work, and you can see based on the money that we are spending, that is a really great recommendation moving forward. And then I wanted to see if we could give Mr. Gowdy the opportunity, because we do hear from the public a lot about the ESSER and the art funds, and I know that we've discussed it in our meetings, but I didn't know if we wanted to provide him an opportunity to kind of explain to the public that's listening between the internal audit and the grant department and all of the resources that we have that do watch that money. I wanted to really give him an opportunity.
Sorry, I don't know if it was entirely clear. Can you restate your question?
Yes, Madam President. I'm asking if we can allow Mr. Gowdy the opportunity to explain for the public, like the internal controls and whatnot over the ESSER and the art money.
Sounds like ESSER auditing.
Just got to make the record, members of the board. So as part of the audit procedures that Mr. Montes pointed out, was one of them was going through our governmental components. So from a control perspective, we have two major areas. One, we have our grants writing department that works in their dark department. And they go through and write grants and they understand compliance as well. We then also have from an expenditure perspective, the fiscal services that works under my department. And so we have what we call segregation of duties, where we have different groups working on different things to check the information. We also have our standard internal controls that our accounting department, as well as everybody else adheres to. So what we do is we do a lot of internal checking. The state audits us a lot on different components. And then Ms. Miramontes pointed out that during their review, they looked at major programs, and one of those major programs that they did look at was ESSER, and went through, and obviously, as she noted that there were no issues of non-compliance in those major programs. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gowdy. We do have some questions here with trustees, so we'll toss this over to trustee Williams.
Thank you, Madam President. My questions are gonna be a little wonky. That word. Nice. Where my daughter's starting to pick up now, and now everything's wonky in our house. So this is more so a question for, I would say, the public that does not want to read 270 pages, although it's riveting stuff. Okay, can I give you that? So I guess to the auditors, I know that this is your profession, this is what you do, this is like your whole life, crunching numbers, writing reports, I'm sure you love it. This is my whole life, right? So reading through it, and even as I'm reading through it now, when you go into the initial summary statements of your thing, I love how plain as it is great, but there's also sections in there where there's maybe a little confusing to people who are just reading it, who don't have the financial history of CCSD. So my question is to you or Jason, if you would, I'm sorry, Mr. Gowdy, if you were to compare us to any other school district or any other district in the state or nationally, is on a scale of 1 to 10, where does CCSD sit? Because you look at our population increasing, our unemployment going down, the state itself is starting to stabilize from 2020 and 2021. Where do we sit on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the best, 1 being we are in dire need of help? It is a political.
Well, all I have to say is, everything came back with clean internal controls, not clean, non-compliance was, there was no non-compliance, unmodified opinions. So that's the best that you can possibly get.
Right.
So, you'd have to look at every other district in the state or across the country to see how they compare and how their auditors rated them, I guess, or, with their opinions. But, yours is the best opinion that you can possibly get. There's, small minor things. Everybody has, room for improvement. I think in my later things, there's really tiny little day things. So I'd say you guys are at the as good as you can get.
Performance. There you go. I love it. Okay. Thank you. That was the answer that I was looking for. I know that sometimes it sounds like a little question. It's really not. It's more so just because most parents are not going to read a 270 report. It's fine, your bank, but I will not. I will because of this, but if I am not a parent that sits on a board, I'm not reading 270 pages to make sure that the district is doing the job, right? My other question, I guess, because we are the largest employer, not only in the county, but in the state, right? Mr. Gowdy, where do you think, I guess, what are your goals to get the district in a better financial spot? Because we're already in a really good one. Where are you looking towards next? We're at 113 million in fund balance.
Thank you, Jason, Director, Student President of the Board, Trustee Williams. So I think that there's a couple things. I think that we've done the best that we could possibly do with the resources that we have, right? The challenge is the resources. Ms. Binder mentioned the funding commission, which I sit on, and the goal is essentially $3.5 billion of increase just to get us to what we consider optimal, which is there's 2 billion, I think, is the average for the nation, and 3.5 is the APA study, $1 billion for the next 10 years. And so while what I think we should do better is that we should continue to use our best efforts to obtain additional funding. The Nevada Association of School Superintendents put together priorities as to how districts in the state would utilize the monies. They didn't come up with dollars, they put priorities together. The CFOs then monetized those in a way for the state, and surprisingly enough, those priorities monetized to just around $3.5 to $3.7 billion. And a lot of it's around increased wages, a lot of it's around teacher pathways, a lot of it's around other supports for different groups that we're unable to provide. We know we do not have enough people in support staff anywhere, right? We need more custodians, we need more landscapers, we need more maintenance people, we need more HVAC. We need to spend $100 million more probably in preventative maintenance a year, so that we can keep our schools open and make sure that our kids are not being transported when it gets hot or cold, right? So I don't think that there's a whole lot more, honestly, that we can do with the resources that we have, because we need more in order to be able to provide some of those other things that are outside.
Thank you so much, Mr. Gowdy. Thank you all for doing this wonderful report. Trustee Williams, Trustee Ford. There you go, Trustee Ford.
Thank you. I have a few questions. In this report, the language reads, we perform tests of its compliance with certain provisions of laws, regulations, contracts, and grant agreements. And then it says the results of our tests disclose no instances of non-compliance or other matters. I guess my question is, what were the tests, or what did the testing consist of?
Well, there would be probably too extensive to to explain here. I mean, we spend probably 1,200 hours on this audit, and as we were designing, we go through a risk assessment process where we look for where the risks are. We also go through a planning process to plan that out, and in that process, we are looking for some of the non-compliance. We're looking for our state statutes. Are you in compliance with the requirements that NRS presents to you from a financial perspective, from any debt covenant issues? So your bonds, are you in compliance with any covenant issues that they have there? Any other contracts that you have, are there any requirements in those contracts that we would need to look at from a financial perspective? So there are some examples of what we're.
So it's, if I'm understanding right, it's basically just to make sure that we are in compliance with the law, that we're not doing anything sketchy or that would be seen, as sketchy. Is it or is it not necessarily, a way to determine if we're getting the best spending for things? Or is it really just to make sure that we're in compliance with the law?
It's more to determine if you're in compliance with the regulations.
Okay, so just if there was like somebody selling pencils for $5 a pencil, but another company sells pencils for $1, and we're buying for $5, as long as that's a legit purchase price, we would be in compliance with the law. And this audit wouldn't necessarily say that there are ways to be more fiscally responsible. Is that correct?
We are not looking for ways to be more fiscally correct. We're looking for example, your contracts, your bid, in your example, was it at a certain level, $25,000 or more, where you have to have multiple bids? Looking at your procurement procedures to make sure that you're in compliance with your regulations.
Okay, thank you. And I think that is only your job to make sure we're in compliance, and it's the board's job to make sure that we are getting the best bang for our buck and being good stewards of public funds. So thank you. My next question is, there's been a lot of chatter in the last couple of years about carryover funds. The only place I've seen it so far in this report is on page 136, and it just has a couple lines. It mentions the school carryover, service level agreements, the supply vacancy, with one, amount. Is there anywhere in here or accessible that has a more detailed breakdown of those carryover funds?
Jason, for the record, members of the board, Superintendent Trustee Ford, I don't believe there's anything in our annual financial report that breaks that down separately, but we do publish on our website annually the amount broken down by school and by type. So that is published per NRS 380G, and that's done annually.
Got it. Just because there might be some people that only look at this, you know, maybe it might be good to link that together. Just a thought. Last question. How do I word this? I'm wondering how much of this report that we're seeing is because of the federal dollars from COVID ESSER funds, or what impact did that influx of federal dollars have on the audit that we're looking at right now?
Jason Getty for the record, members of the board, trustee Ford. I would say it essentially has no effect on the financial statements and the process itself. We have an annual audit regardless of whether we get ESSER funds. ESSER funds did not require an additional audit. This was already required by state law and performed. What it did impact is those are obviously major funds and major projects that were reviewed specifically by the auditors. They would go through and they would review different programs if we didn't have them. But because those are such significant components, those become part of it. But overall, it did change the nature of what had to be done because we do this every year.
Okay. I guess I know we've done, like you said earlier, well on this every single year. So I don't think it would have affected our ability to do the audit correctly, but is it the amount that we have in our reserve and the amount that we've been able to you know, be proud of right here? I'm just trying to I'm wondering what would this look like if not for that?
Jason, again, for the record, just to clarify, so what you're saying is how much of the reserve do we have because of the ESSER funding?
Yeah, and just all of it. If, you know, COVID had never happened, what would we be looking at something very similar to this?
I honestly would have no idea. COVID had such a massive impact on a number of different things, meaning our revenues and our expenditures. It would be nearly impossible to say where we were. We were on a very strong trajectory of improvement from a financial perspective prior to COVID. And I think when we were building our budget for 21, because I wouldn't go for dates, right? First year COVID, we were projecting to again grow our reserves by at least 0.25% each time and possibly more. So I think we were on a good trajectory, but I have no way of predicting what the ultimate result would have been had COVID not occurred.
Okay, thank you very much. And for the record, I think you've done a great job with that general fund. I remember how stressed out we all were a few years ago. So thank you very much.
Right, I don't see anyone, any other trustees. Are there any other comments from the audit advisory? Ms. Binders?
Thank you, Madam President. In follow-up to that, like, for example, I know last year I had requested, like, how much money did we save in utilities? Because 2 years ago, we had a very set number when we came forward for this meeting. And then I did request that information. I don't have it in front of me, but so don't quote me on the exact number, but the first year of COVID savings in utilities was somewhere around 30 million. And then for the second fiscal year, it was around, I want to say about 25, 26 million. So when you're asking about like an impact on spending and stuff, like if we saved that much in utilities, like Mr. Gaddy, was that money we were able to reallocate and into other, you know, needs in the district?
Jason got it for the record. So yeah, so if we recall, the reason that utilities were so significantly under budget in the first year was that we actually utilized ESSER 1 funding to fund utilities for a couple of reasons. The state had cut funding to the Clark County School District by about $94 billion, which and those cuts were primarily in areas that affected our most at-need students. Read by grade 3. Student Vic 3 funding got cut, and then SB 178. And so what we did is, because utilities were allowable, it was a single easy number to do, and was big enough that then freed up general funds in order to cover that deficit that the state had created through that first go around. And so, you know, again, had we not had COVID, we wouldn't have had the need. And so it's hard to answer the question, but we were able to allocate some of those funds to give us flexibility in order for us to go back and make sure that we could take care of our most at-risk and need students.
Mr. Gowdy.
Trustee Garcia, all right, trustee Garcia Morales.
Thank you, Madam President. When I hear the presentation, I hear that this is a very strong, continues to be a strong audit report, and it has gone through many layers of review, analysis, many hours developing this content and the report. So I'm also just kind of reflecting on the fact that we are the largest employer. Our resources don't reflect that. The resources that we receive to fund public education for our students does not reflect that we are also the largest organization. So it reminds me of just how much we do with so little. And this is, I think it's especially important to continue to bring up. I implore we have to continue talking about this. I mean, we just happen to be talking about it because of the audit. The audit brings up these challenges that we face, especially as our population changes. But we have a responsibility to continue to carry the message that there is a lot of work that still needs to be done, and I appreciate the work that is being done at the state to address the disparities, people funding. Now, when it comes to there's also a lot of there is some public pressure to potentially conduct a legislative audit or of CCSD's resources. I want to learn a little bit more about what's the difference between this independent audit and a legislative audit. What would they report that's different?
Thank you, Chief Secretary, for the record. Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Chara, Trustee Garcia Morales. So the independent audit is simplest way to put it is it's a review of our financial statements to determine if they're accurate, materially accurate. As Ms. Miramontes pointed, it's not about efficiency, it's not about other components. Although auditors will note certain things if they see things, and there's sometimes recommendations on what we call business practices. But that's not the target. The target is for them to say that these financial statements are materially accurate so that when a bondholder that wants to buy bonds looks at this, they know that that's what it is. That's one of the primary goals. The state looks at it and understands. Legislative audits can technically take any form they want, right? So they can determine what these specific objectives are. The last legislative audit that we went through back in, I believe, 2003-ish, was there were some operational components to it. And so we went through and looked at some transportation, some food service, even some HR components. And so it's maybe a little bit more broad. And I think that, one thing I think we should consider is that if there is a legislative audit of a financial school district, it really should be opened up to all school districts. I'm not sure why we continue to be, siloed out each time. I think we've shown, as I mentioned before, over the past 5 years, the level of financial stability that we've created with not significant funding. And so we have been very strong stewards of taxpayer dollars, and that's one of the things we want to focus on. So, as I mentioned, it could take the form of any piece, but usually there's more operational, more HR type components to an audit of that nature.
Superintendent?
Yes, Madam President, members of the board. First, I'd like to thank the audit committee for their tireless work in their service to our community, and certainly our CFO and his team for the work. And as you heard this evening, I think the last 5 years, as soon as Mr. Gowdy and his team been able to put this school district in great financial position. At the same time as I believe, at least since I've been here, we've been giving our employees raises. All bargaining groups have received raises with very limited funding. But I also want to point out, I think part of the conversation that we had at NASB this week, and Trustee Garcia Morales was around the distractions. I mean, we've had report after report, the audit and finance committee, the third-party auditors have done a great job of coming in and reported and pretty much saying that we're in good position. And for the state to come out and kind of come and say we want to audit, when we have seen very little investment in the needs. We had operational audits, and that's what I wanted to chime in. We did, the Council of Great City Schools came in and did an operational audit. One of the things that they came out and said that we were the lowest funded urban district in America. Then we had the Council of Great City Schools come in and do an audit on our special ed and said the same thing. So I think, is it a distraction or is it a real investment in K-12 education for our children? But I think that is a conversation that we need to have, and the value that this state places on our students. So thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent. I'm going to check in with Trustee Guzman. And just a kind reminder, trustees, please stay off your phones while we're on the dais unless it's an emergency. Trustee Guzman, do you have any questions or comments?
Yes, I did. And I agree with Dr. Jara that we seem to be the district that folks like to focus in on. So I wanted to reiterate that. But I do have a question for the audit committee, because I think when we take a look at 388T and we look at the carry forward from the school, I'm wondering if the percentage from Central, and I asked you this, Mr. Gowdy, when we were having the briefing, if the 4% and the carry forward, what would the total percentage be that the state looks at for our carry forward?
Jason Getting for the record. I believe this is a NAC now. It is in the Pupil Center Funding Plan, but I believe it's a NAC now. And it has been changed to 12% of budgeted fund balance, though. The key component there is budgeted. We do not budget fund balance for the $200 million city and schools. We budget that to be spent. And so when we look at that 12% component, and again, there's two pieces to that, in that if you are over the 16.6% in the pupil-centered funding plan, you have to revert some of that back to the state. The second piece is the 12%, which is NAC, is really around what is allowed to be discoverable, essentially, and available under negotiations. 12% is such a large number for us. That's never going to be a concern. If it is, we'll be in such good financial shape, we won't worry about it, right? So those are the two pieces. But again, we will not be budgeting near that 12% because the largest component of our fund balance as it stands right now is the restricted component for NRS 380G, and we budget for that to be expended. Hope that answers your question.
Trustee Guzman.
Thank you. It kind of does and it kind of doesn't. And the reason why is because when I was at NASB, the conference last weekend, a lot of the districts were worried about the sweep. And so this concerned me because of the carry forward that the state would see from the schools, and how would that affect us? Would that trigger a sweep if the carry forward from the schools and our central office equal more than 16.6%? That was so that's my concern.
Jason, for the record, so the sweep is based off of budget, not off actuals. So these are actuals. These get to the end of the year. When you see our amended final budget, which we present in essentially a month or 3 weeks, we will have $0 budgeted in carryover for schools. We are going to assume that all schools spend all of their dollars. One is we have to do that because they could spend it. And if we don't budget for it, then we're out of compliance with the law. So we need to do that. So one key component of that law is the term budgeted. The reason some other districts are concerned about it is because they had 20-25% fund balances. And when you have a fund balance that big, as you're unassigned, you have to budget for it. You can't budget to spend all that money. And so the reason they're concerned, or some of them are concerned, is because they did have very, very high fund balances.
Trustee Guzman?
Okay, thank you. That answered my question. I really do appreciate it. And I really appreciate how detailed this was. I did read all 200 and some pages. So thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Guzman. Ms. Binder?
Thank you, Madam President. I paid attention to this a lot over the last couple of years. So in addition to what Trustee Guzman just asked, have we had a suite yet under 388G?
Jason, for record, no, we're not anticipating sweeps. As we mentioned, it's all about that budgeted piece. And I believe once we get to the 6 to 8% in unassigned, which is really the area which is under control, I think it becomes at that point, we need to be investing more directly into our schools and our operations rather than just holding on to that one.
I see no questions here from the trustees. Are there any final comments from the audit advisory? Ms. Binder?
Thank you, Madam President. My only final comment is I know that our internal audit department is very small. They also are understaffed. It's an issue that comes up at all of our meetings when we're looking at the dedicated hours and the projects. They are amazing. They're very organized. The new software system that they are integrating into is supposed to alleviate a lot of stuff for them. But I would just, I want to support, that if we can, that they have access to adequate employees to help them, because when you look at all of our reports, you can tell there's still a lot of work to be done. And the way to support the work is to support that department. But they do amazing work under the constraints that they have with their personnel. So that's all. Thank you.
Ms. Binder? Jason?
Just got to correct me. Yes, I've agreed with that since I got here. I'm a prior auditor. All right. I agree that we're short in virtually every place we are as well, right? But one of the things that internal audit does is they provide us cost savings. In construction, they identify millions of dollars each year of billings that in air and things like that. So they assist our construction management team, and they do a lot of really good work in our school banking and prevent items there. We are in the process of out co-sourcing, sorry is the proper term, to with a firm that would assist us in providing some hours so that they can rededicate some of their resources to what we'll call more operational audits. And so we're very close to having that done. When we've gone through that process, have dedicated some resources to that. You'll probably see that when I present amended final budget for whatever that does cost. It's not a whole lot at this point. It'll be a little bit more later, but I think the return on investment for those are pretty much exponential. I know Ms. Burma obviously probably talked about some of the internal audit findings that they've had when they go out and do operational things. You can really find some things that are invaluable. And so I agree, and we working with Dr. Jara and our board yet, but it's still processing the budget request when we talk about AFB as it's an important area.
Thank you, Mr. Gowdy, and thank you everyone for making this audit possible. We'll go ahead and move on. Looks like we are ready to move on to agenda item 3.03. Thank you all again so much. And there's I guess the final plea, it sounds like please support any additional funds into our schools. Before I fully open item 3.03, is there anyone who did not get a chance to complete their public speaker card? Now is the time to do it. Once we have started this item, we will not accept any yellow cards. So please do so now. Okay. Right, so we are now on agenda item 3.03. We're going to toss this back to you, Mr. Downey. So again, this is the independent auditor's narrative report on recommendations and district responses.
Thank you, Madam President. I'm actually going to turn it over to Ms. Miramontes to walk through this as this is her area. Thank you.
Well, I think this would be, this will be for the vote and something.
You can start, yeah.
Okay. And so I can walk through, so a lot of this are the same reports that I already walked through. There's one additional requirement that our auditing standards require us to present, and that is, it's a required communications letter. And so it pretty much what it does is it outlines what our responsibilities are, what your responsibilities are, and then it just highlights several other items of interest. Some of the things are just compliance with ethical requirements, qualitative aspects, so significant accounting policies. There was one new accounting policy that was implemented this year, and that was related to contractors. We have pointed to you, if you want to read more about that, that would be in note 1's financial statements. We also discussed significant accounting estimates. And again, these are in our opinion based on what we have looked at. And we believe the most significant sensitive accounting estimates are the risk management estimate of the future claims, other post-employment benefit plans, actuarial liabilities, and then also your pension plan, actuarial liabilities, those are all estimates. And then as far as your financial statement disclosures, the most significant that we believe relates to your general obligation bonds, and then also your defined benefit pension plan. Those are, you know, where your humongous liabilities are. So we want to just point you to that. We did not have any significant difficulties. We did identify some uncorrected misstatements. So there's corrected misstatements and then uncorrected. Corrected would be if they were material, if we believe that they need to be made. We also identified, like I said, some small minor items. We did identify some, but we did not believe that they were material. Management did not believe they were material either. So we both passed on those, but we have outlined those for you. We did not have any disagreements with management. And that's pretty much the meat of what this required communications states. Other than that, we I've already presented all the reports.
Thank you very much. Are there any comments or questions from the audit advisory committee members? Right. We will go to, let's check in with Trustee Guzman before I check in with the trustees here. Trustee Guzman.
I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Guzman. Trustee Williams.
I was ready to make a motion if we had public comment.
We do have a public comment. You can still make your motion, however you need to hear comment.
So, Madam President, members of the board, thank you so much for this report. I would like to make a motion to accept this report, item 3.03.
Actually, Trustee Williams, there's a special motion that needs to be heard, which I appreciate it, but
All right, now you take it, Trustee Brooks.
yeah, I think it's a good time anyway to hear from public comment. We have one person signed up, and that's Mr. Bayless. Mr. Bayless, come on up. Again, just a reminder, this is public comment on the independent auditor's narrative report on recommendations and district responses. Please stay to that topic. Thank you.
No problem. Hi, I'm James Bayless for the record. So, I have a question. As far as, I forgot your name, ma'am? Ms. Vermont. So we've been talking about compliance and logs.
Mr. Bayless, this is a comment to the board.
Okay.
So just please refrain from individual.
So what this video is referring to, the laws and compliance. We've been going, actually, this is our 1-year anniversary of arguing about how things haven't been in compliance. So when one of her major programs is SPED, we've been talking about that. If you guys haven't, for God's sake, just at this gentleman's, review, you guys broke fate. 53% is what he got evaluated on, but you missed the 47%, which was the sped. And that's why Lola pushed it, and then we did the meeting the next week. Yeah, so you basically violated fate sitting right here. Then that's beside the point. When we're talking about laws and compliance.
No, we are specifically talking about the narrative report on
I
recommendations.
was speaking of mistakes on something she said that you guys aren't.
That is not the action item.
Oh, so
This
we're
is the
talking
action
about the
item.
money for the sped program that's being misappropriated?
Okay, so if you look into reference material, it's 29 pages of this auditor's report. That is currently what we're voting on.
Right, I'm just trying to
So
figure
that
out, like,
is-
I'm just trying to figure out, if you guys are trying to save money, maybe we should not pay the legal system in our valley so much. We can actually use it for the teachers and everybody else. I'm sure the harbors don't need a couple $1 million. But I bet you our teachers do. I bet you our schools and infrastructure definitely do. Child safety and everything, all those grants and everything that comes into grants and everything else is the very things that you aren't compliant. Because if you're getting paid for child safety under grants, then you forgot my child. You got paid for it.
Mr. Bayless, do you have any comments on the report?
I'll keep you legend. I'll save you the hassle of keep running down my minutes and I'll just
Thank you, Mr. Bayless.
well, I figure you talk more than I do.
Trustee Brooks?
Thank you, President Cepeda. I'd like to make a motion to approve the Clark County School District's responses to the independent auditor's recommendations for the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2022, with the written narrative and responses being incorporated by reference into the minutes of this meeting, and with the entire report being transmitted required in Nevada Revised Statute NRS 354.624, and approval to accept the independent auditor's statements on NRS compliance for the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2022, including necessary corrective actions, if any, with the statements being transmitted and filed as required in NRS 354.6245.
Thank you, Trustee Brooks. Trustee Williams?
Sorry. I apologize. I may not be able to make the motion, but I can make the second.
Thank you for seconding, Trustee Williams. We have trustees, we have a motion by Trustee Brooks and a second by Trustee Williams. Please cast your votes. Trustee Guzman?
Aye.
Thank you, Trustee Guzman. Motion passes 7-0. Thank you very much, trustees. We will move on to agenda item 3.04. Before I open 3.04, now is a chance to, and thank you very much. This is now the time to submit any yellow cards. Once you open the item, you will not be able to submit any public comment. Going once, and twice. Okay. Now this is 3.04, the 2021-2022 recap of budget appropriation transfers. Mr. Gowdy.
Thank you, Madam President, Jason Gowdy, Director, members of the board, Superintendent Jara. This is simply what it states is a recap of all the budget appropriation transfers that you approve on a monthly basis, each process, and this is our annual required through NRS, et cetera, in order to recap all these and have the board approve them so that we can submit them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gowdy. Trustees, any questions? Audit advisory committee. Any questions? Trustee Guzman, any questions?
No, thank you.
All right, thank you. So seeing no comment, I'll go ahead and toss this to public comment. Mr. Bayless. This is the 2021-2022 recap of budget appropriation transfers.
Right, so we're talking about like clean air and all that neat stuff, right? Basically about Fremont, it's kind of where I'm gonna talk about. Right, there's a clean air for Fremont.
Budget appropriations.
Budget appropriations?
Budget appropriation transfers.
Oh, for transferring the funds? Nah, it's putting this guy in county, right?
Thank you, Mr. Bayless. Reference materials also online. I believe they might have some paper copies as well. Is that correct? In case you, right? Right, trustees? I'm looking for a motion. Trustee Williams?
Something I'd like to say about this, right?
I don't believe.
Second.
Yeah, all right, so.
All right, Madam President, members of the board, I'd like to make a motion to provide item 3.04.
Thank you, trustee Williams. Trustee Cavazos.
Thank you, Madam President. I'll second that motion.
Thank you, trustee Cavazos. We have a motion by trustee Williams, a second by trustee Cavazos. Trustees, please cast your votes. Trustee Guzman.
Aye.
Thank you, trustee Guzman. Motion passes 7-0. All right, we are moving quickly along. We are on agenda item 3.05. Before I open 3.05, now is a chance. If you have not completed a public speaker card, please do so now. Otherwise, once we start this item, we will not be able to take your public comments.
I had a question, sorry, please forgive me. I'm here for agenda 401, right?
We are
There
not,
are other agendas that I want to speak with Gally about. I didn't know that we had to fill out yellow cards per agenda.
4.0.
Yeah, that's late. You guys got about 5 more to get to, but I know.
Yeah, we're not quite at 4.01.
Yeah, I know that. But I do want to talk about other agendas that you guys did go over, but I didn't know I had to fill out any yellow cards per agenda. But I would like to speak with Mr. Gally.
Okay,
So-
currently we are on agenda item 3.
Right.
Yes, so
But-
well, we're gonna continue our.
I get you. I'll take a step up
Publicly
and
noticed.
anytime you guys come up with, I want to speak about
Alright,
it. Right.
alright, we are moving on to agenda item 3.05. Let's comment on items not listed as action items. So if it was not listed on the agenda, I'm, oh, sorry, there are 2 you can have a jump in the year. So if you actually like to, you can submit yours here for 3.05. Otherwise, I have Mr. Bayless.
How are you doing today?
Very well.
James Bayless for the record. Sorry, I forgot what my topic was for this agenda. What was my topic right now?
This is public comment on items not listed
Right,
as
they asked
action
you for the
items.
time.
So,
Forgot what my.
Mr. Bayless,
It's down.
Mr. Bayless,
Okay,
This
I'll
is-
get my paper.
this is item not listed as action items.
Right.
So- You don't, you have.
Okay, ask me. Well, because I don't remember I was talking to Lisa and I actually said a topic that this was great. But I understand. So on public comment factors, we've been going round and round for a complete year today. This police report that the schools will don't know find in their paperwork. And you know, a lot of my son's situations, my son's still out of school right now. And nobody's addressed nothing. Not one person's picked up a phone to call. And the sad thing is about the situation with this police report, Madam Cepeda, this is your school, Fremont. Brian Burrow, the assistant principal. And if you look on the bottom of that police report, there's the AG's address, which was supposed to be Las Vegas, DEA, Pecos of Bonanza, not 555 East Washington. And kind of weird that the AG's not sitting right there, but I found out why. 3900, sweet. Yeah, it's Dan's office. That's home today. She asked me if we want to go to lunch. So I'm just curious. When you're dealing with a school board and you're basically being ignored, and then they just decide to drop your kid out of school and just leave it, I don't see how anybody can sit up here and say that's a success when you can't really do much as far as the legal world, because a certain individual is a chairman of the Las Vegas Global Alliance that kind of covers the whole fucking city. Not sure what you do. You have the Attorney General in your pocket. What do you do? So again, situation is, we were talking to this board about money. You guys are great about money, but you forget why you got the money. It wasn't to make you guys look pretty on board. It's actually for the children. Well, my children. I have a nephew that's about to come into CCSD and it scares the dog crap out of me because he's going to be sped. And I already know how JARA controls the sped department or lack of there. You know, you're 49% below par. Hey, that's been going on for a while, but you guys have been doing great as far as what you say. But why is it that when our sped kids can barely read and can barely spell the word read, but you guys are up here saying you guys are being successful? I'm just curious where you're looking. Is it your banking account? Or it definitely ain't the ethic and state laws because you ain't successful there. Miss Linda pointed that out, which is very beautiful. Oh, have a good day.
Don't see any other items on 3.05.
First time state has never interrupted.
Right. We are moving on to item 3.06. Adjournment of the joint meeting with the Audit Advisory Committee. Trustees, I'm looking for a motion.
President, I'd like to adjourn my meeting.
Trustee Brooks.
I'd like to second.
Thank you, Trustee Brooks. Trustees, we have a motion by Trustee Garcia Morales and a second by Trustee Brooks. Please cast your votes. Trustee Guzman.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0. Thank you very much, trustees. We are now returning to our regular board meeting. Thank you, our amazing Audit Advisory Committee. We always love a good joint meeting with you all. We're moving on to, before I fully open agenda item 4.01, now is the time to submit any public speaker cards. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and open this up now. Mr. Bayless, we'll start with folks who called in ahead of time and then we'll move to yellow cards.
So this is the agendas for all those long laundry lists. I kind of just mainly want to talk about Fremont's clean air problem. So I think the main situation with I believe that the budget does need to be done for clean air, but I don't think it's so much the air system. It might be the crap that's in the building. You know, the people, the high police reports, yeah, the crap is at the whole campus. When your kids are worrying about, again, that's something really harmful to be around your kids and being handy. Wouldn't you think? Instead of worrying about air purification, maybe we should try staff purification. That would be a good thing. When we're talking about, as far as clean air, I'm just curious about, like, the one lady was talking about the budget that you guys got for transportation. But the EPA just threw out $9.8 million to get all for that. I'm just curious why we're throwing out more for the same situation. But like I said, a lot of these schools do need a lot of infrastructure because we are running on some pretty old buildings. And we are an old system that highly needs a major upgrade. But we can't do that when we're paying out a legal system more than what you guys say your budget runs. When you have the whole juvenile delinquent system coming out this building, that's the problem. And that's relevant to Fremont because, again, that's the only reason why I know about it. So again, as far as Fremont, I don't think throwing money would fix the problem of your air in there. I think maybe wiping the floors of all that crap that's in there and getting rid of some of all the really crappy people might clean the air a lot better than that air filter. Have a good day.
Thank you, Ms. Reyes. Ms. Binder.
That dust is broken. Anna Binder for the record. So I was in traffic for the first part of the meeting, so here I am, 4.01. I just want to highlight two things that I did kind of have an issue with in the consent agenda tonight. One of them was us spending like over $500,000 for an assessment conference, like a lot of money. I have schools right now that need like some tables and things like that, and we're trying to raise funds from the public to supply things for the schools that they don't have budgets for, but we can spend $500,000 going to a conference. So that rubbed me really wrong. Just want to say it out loud. And then the other one is the hiring, the new HR hire. We just granted a lot of money for a couple marketing companies to help with recruitment and whatnot. I think I said something about that too a couple meetings ago. And then now we're hiring someone to kind of handle some other things to the tune of like $130,000. But when you Google her, she's a real estate person. There was no HR background, no nothing. I couldn't, and she's from Florida, so I'm wondering whose friend she is. But in the future, if we're opening up a $130,000 job to somebody with no experience, I think I could do a really good job at that. So I'll start paying attention to job postings more. I do not have a real estate background, but I do have like a really good public engagement. People do actually really like me. So just throwing it out there, I could use, 130 grand a year too. So thanks.
English minor, Jenna Robertson.
Sorry, I didn't realize it was my turn. Thank you. President Cepeda, members of the board, my name is Jenna Robertson, and I am co-founder and board chair of Nevada Alliance for Student Diversity. I'm here tonight to talk to you about the lack of engagement the community continues to feel from members of this board, parents in particular. When the public comment process changed at board meetings, it was understandable that something needed to be done to counter the bullying and disruption happening, though it was glaringly noticeable to us that nothing happened when members of the community were being harassed at meetings, but things changed only when a board member was harassed on the dais. It was argued then by the board that these meetings are not the appropriate forum for community members to raise their concerns to trustees anyway. We were told that community engagement meetings would begin again, allowing the community to speak to their trustees directly. Apparently, that is the appropriate forum for parents and community members to raise concerns. I've been watching and don't think I've seen anything announced or posted yet from any trustee. I try to be an engaged parent. I've been an elected SOT member since the second year that they existed, and I've served as a parent member, a non-voting member, a non-voting community member, chair, vice chair, and this year again, a parent member. In all my years on an SOT, the only time I've had a trustee join us for a meeting was earlier this week, now that I have children in a District G school. Thank you for joining us, Trustee Cavazos. Thank you for listening to our concerns at that meeting. So I am here to ask when these meetings will again take place. It was part of the justification given for changing public comment period. I live in one district and I have kids in schools in two other districts, and I'll be there for you. I have things to say, and I think the community at large does. I also would like to ask, we have the technology as parents with children in magnet schools. We have the technology to follow their buses. You have a great app. I believe it was student created. It's a beautiful app, and I count on it every morning. I'm on that app at about 4 to get them on the bus at 5:30. It's an early day for us. It's a late day for them when they come home. I do not have the ability as a parent to follow my kids if they take the late activity bus. It's the same bus that starts at their school, ends at the same school that drops them off every day. And I'm told we don't have the technology for me to see that bus to follow my kids. In fact, when I called to ask transportation why I couldn't see that bus, I was told perhaps I need to buy my child's phone. And when I said I was calling and concerned because my daughter was an hour and a half late from the late bus, and her phone that I had to buy her to do just that, died that day because their bus was so late. Oh man, if her phone didn't die, I lost my mind. I apologize to that woman. I lost my mind. So please, we have the technology. Let parents see that bus. Thank you.
Alex McGurk.
Alex McGurk. I'm going to read because I want to stay on time. I am a voting SOT member. The attention of my SOT committee, and I would like to bring it to the attention of you as well, that our school budget has left an expected carryover and LA funds. We experience much difficulty when trying to reconcile the data in actual school budget, and we still came out with no clear answers and no explanation. There's either an issue with the programs that are being used to report and collect these funds, or the money is simply missing. This has forced us to make budget cuts for 2022-2023 school year. Not only is this concerning as an SOT member, it's concerning as a mom, and it's concerning as a taxpayer. In addition to our shortage, limited communication multiple carryover funds that they cannot verify or track back to 2021-2022 in the school year budgets. We would like transparency in carryover funds from one fiscal year to another fiscal year. So my question, not really a question that needs to be answered, but SOT would like to know who is responsible for auditing carryover funds and what tools are being used to reconcile and implement when there is discrepancies. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ashniel Manning? Apologies
Right.
if I mispronounced your name.
No, you're good. Couple questions. Now, forgive me. But some of these questions get answers because I'm not here all the time, and I kind of want some answers for some of these questions. I know you guys had spoke, superintendent, about some of the benefits you guys are getting. You guys are getting raises and all types of stuff. And I heard Chairman Gowdy speak about our budget plan. It blows my mind how much money we're spending, and it's not on the kids. So as a father, my kids, I don't know why I get a text message every morning stating that my kid's bus is going to be late. I get that every morning. Like this lady said, it pumps fear in her heart when her child is an hour late. I don't know why my kids can't get to school on time. Another issue Mr. Gowdy raised was not having HVAC guys or girls to facilitate these units, these classrooms that are bungalows that are getting a little too cold for kids to learn at this time of year. So my question to you guys is, when this money is being allocated, when and how is it given to these schools? Because if kids are not getting it, they're not. I hear you guys, pat yourselves on the back, but my kids come home cold, hungry, and late. So I want to know, Mr. Gowdy, quick question for you, if I can get a response. Is our balance sheet, is it public records? Can I access it and see what kind of, I can't. Because I do feel like in this climate, I'm a market guy myself, I do feel like a lot of exposure to some sketchy, I like your word, cryptocurrencies could be an effect to where we can kind of witness what's going to happen to the kids' funding in the future. A lot of risky bets are being placed in this market, and if it's taken out of the kids' mouths and transportation, I would like to see the balance sheet myself. And another thing, when it comes down to dress code rules or violations or whatever you guys want to call them, I think we need to kind of have discretion when the months get colder, and the criminalization you guys put on hoodies. I think kids shouldn't be subject to white fright. Because my kids are straight A students, and when they're told that their hoodie is deemed naughty or gang affiliate, they don't need that information. So for you guys to fear Black men with hats, hoods, and it affects the education of our kids, I think you need to do some soul searching. And if I can get any answers, that would be grateful. If not, I got 17 seconds to look at you.
Mr. Manning, we cannot provide in a back and forth.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
David Gomez.
David Gomez for the record. We've got a Peace Alliance president, former Waco president, former deputy director of LULAC, federal lobbyist and state lobbyist here. But I'm not here to talk about that. Obviously, I said to introduce yourself. So my children are still in the school district, but I worry about a school district that doesn't pray. And I worry about those things because the people that control what's happening to what's going on below them, they're not praying. And I came to tell you that maybe you don't know what John 3:16 says, but some of you need to look it up. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son, that whomever shall believe in him shall not perish, but have everlasting life. And this is for all of you, and it tells me in Ezekiel 33 to warn you, to be the warning. It tells me to be the person that tells the wicked when you're doing something wrong. When you're sinful, you're doing something wrong, and to confront you so that you can turn from your ways so that you might be saved. But in Romans, it tells us as well that none are righteous. That includes me, that's standing right here. Even though I'm a high priest in a church that is adored by many and hated by others, the LDS church. I'm an ex-minister. I have a minister license, but that's not what I do. That's not what I'm doing. But I am telling you, when you equate and you subtract God from you guys, you leave room and a door open for Satan to get in. And for some of you that don't believe in Satan, his name is Lilith. So just in case you need to go look in the Bible, you'll find it somewhere if you have time. But in all actuality, whether this is making you feel uncomfortable or making you feel comfortable at all, it doesn't matter. Because the point is that Jesus said, let the little children come to me. He moved his own disciples out the way to say, let them come to me. So if he, a man, historical value, did tell their disciples, move out the way, you need to tell people to move out the way so that you can do your job efficiently to protect our children. And it's your job to make sure that prayer remains in this boardroom. Because when leaders don't have prayer, it's funny, we praise firefighters all the time. We go, hey, how you doing? This and that. We all get all happy, but they get on their knees and pray. Isn't that amazing? Why don't you go visit a fire station for once and they sit down at their table and they pray? But it's hard for us to do it in here. Why? Because we're catering to everybody else. This is our country. This is how we were established. And this is what makes it great. It's one nation under God. So stop saying that pledge if you don't mean it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gomez. That is all I have for public comment. We are now moving on to agenda item 5.01. Our next upcoming meeting of the Board of Trustees is Wednesday, December 7th, 2022 at 9 a.m. We'll be here in the boardroom. Moving on to agenda item 6.06. Adjournment. Trustees, I'm looking for a motion. Trustee Ford?
I happily move to adjourn.
Thank you. Trustee Ford, trustee Garcia. Thank you, trustee Garcia. Motion by trustee and a second by trustee Garcia. Please cast your votes. Trustee Guzman. Aye. Thank you, trustee Guzman. And motion passes 7-0. Thank you all so much. Please check out the section 7 for information. You'll find lots of handy information.